everyone. We've got another episode of Fkthry coming up, and we got a really special guest on the show this week. Who is it, Mike?
That's right. We've got the man, the myth, and the legend himself, Mr. You Suck at Producing, also known as DJ Underbelly, also known by his friends as Tim.
How y'all doing?
Doing great. All right. We're doing good, man. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Awesome. So, everybody, this is Underbelly. You may know him from such videos as You Suck at Producing. He's kind of been around on YouTube for a while, teaching everybody how to make music and suck a little bit less. It's good to have you here on the show. We've got a couple questions for you. So why don't we just start with some simple stuff? What sort of musical influences were you listening to that got you started on your career as a musician and started you making music?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. And as far as musical influences go, DJ Shadow's Introducing was the thing that got me into making beats. I figured out that it was all made with samples, and so I started collecting vinyl, bought my own shitty-ass turntable, got an MPC 500, and the rest is history.
Do you still use the MPC 500? Or do you move directly to Ableton?
I got maybe like a year and a half on that thing. And then I was just like, fuck this. Yeah. And I moved on to Ableton shortly after that and haven't looked back since.
Yep. That seems like the story for everybody these days.
So, curious then, was Ableton the first DAW you were using?
If you don't count GarageBand, then yes. I think I made a couple like middle school chemistry projects on GarageBand.
Oh, really?
Wait, chemistry projects? You had to make music?
Yeah, so there was one where I made like a rap on my element that was assigned to me in 8th grade, and it was sulfur. And so
nice.
I rapped about sulfur as a 12-year-old on GarageBand.
Do you still remember the rap?
No. And if I did, I would
throw it down.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You guys, my sick rhymes.
Yeah.
So you kind of started then with electronic production. If you're saying you said DJ Shadow, my next question was going to be like, what got you transitioned into electronic production? Because as far as I'm aware, you've been playing music for a while. So did you start with anything other than electronic production first, or did you just sort of move straight into doing electronic stuff?
I started with classical piano when I was 7 because my parents told me to. And I'm very glad they did, because they tried to quit a couple times and they were not having it. And I'm very happy that they didn't let me off the hook, because it's been very, very useful. Even with production and making womps, it's just a discipline that, being on a classical instrument imbues in you, that I found very valuable.
How long did you stick with that for? Because I did 2.5 years, 3 years of that, so it didn't get very far, and then I quit, and my parents let me quit, and I still learned a fair bit from that, but I didn't go kind of the full 9 yards. How long did you play for?
I did 10 years of classical piano, and then I still play, not classical, but I still play piano today.
Huh?
Awesome. Yeah, no, I guess it's convenient because, of all the instruments you could have learned, piano happens to be the one that we all use for production, right? Nobody's sitting there programming MIDI with a guitar.
So there's that one MIDI guitar that's really terrible, but also sounds really cool. But
yeah. Cool. So here's the question I really got to know. You suck at producing, man. What's the story behind the name and the character you developed for that concept?
Well, the name was a complete ripoff of another YouTube channel called You Suck at Photoshop, which was pretty big in the dawn of YouTube. And it was about sort of like a self-hating professional Photoshop man who also lived in his basement, and like his wife left him, and he like tried to Photoshop the marriage license or something off of like a picture of like him and his wife or some shit like that.
That's about as sad as it could possibly get.
And so it was just like all the self-deprecating humor and shit I sort of took from that. And I sort of synthesized that with like the absurdity of like Tim and Eric. I love Tim and Eric. And that's sort of how the character emerged. I mean, it wasn't really a conscious choice. I just like started doing it and kind of stuck.
Yeah. How long have you
Right.
been,
So it wasn't.
oh, sorry,
go ahead. No, you go, Joel.
How long have you been doing YouTube? I used to see your videos like probably a couple of years ago. I kind of would throw them on every once in a while. I'd see them show up in my recommended or whatnot. But like, when did you start like first uploading videos?
The first video was 2013,
Wow.
and then I started uploading like a video a week, 2018.
Okay.
And I did videos every once in a while between now and 2018, but that was when I first really was taking it seriously.
Got it seriously. And did you find that you were growing a following kind of with the intermediate schedule, or did it only really start to take off when you started to kind of put more effort into it in 2018?
I grew somewhat of I think when I first uploaded that first video, there must have been some sort of like algorithmic fluke, because I got like hundreds of thousands of views and, some traction off of that first one. So I did a couple more and they didn't get nearly as many hits. And,
such as the algorithm.
Exactly. And actually only recently surpassed the view count on that first video, like maybe a couple months ago with another one. So it took like 6 years. But
crazy.
The sort of steady growth came with regularly uploading. And honestly, I don't think actually uploading a video a week was that good in terms of growth. I find that there's just a handful of videos that, are doing subject matter that is really sort of in the zeitgeist, or at least it was at the time. Like, for example, like my lo-fi hip hop chords video did really well because everybody was super fucking into lo-fi.
Doing lo-fi hip, yeah.
Exactly. So doing something like that where the video sort of material is very targeted, as opposed to just doing a video a week on compression,
whatever you can think of at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was actually, not as conducive to growth as I thought it was. But the sort of discipline of it was good. And, for people who do want to get deep with the videos, there's a fuck ton of content for them now. So, yeah.
Got a nice back catalog.
Exactly.
Cool. What kind of videos do you find tend to get the most traction?
Yeah, so something like the lo-fi hip-hop one was really sort of the one that popped off, I think, the most. So, like, obviously a genre that people are interested in, and, kind of a technique that people are interested, that get them a particular sound or genre. Like, for example, one was using grain delay to make sounds dreamy. So people like dreamy sounds. Yeah. People are curious about grain delay. They don't know what the fuck that is. So combining technique with sound or technique with genre is usually the sweet spot. And with the lo-fi one, I called it lo-fi chords without samples, because, everybody just samples the shit out of everything. Yeah. Some dead guy playing piano to make lo-fi. So I thought, well, probably people are sick of doing that. They're curious about how, music theory works. Maybe this could be a good way of, shoving that down people's throats. So,
yeah,
just
make it look inviting in there.
Exactly. So that's sort of the stuff I feel like that does the best.
Yeah, it's really smart, like kind of just attacking two different angles at once, in one sort of semi-clickbaity title.
You have to clickbait on YouTube these days. Like, it's like, I don't think you can actually succeed without clickbaiting. It's kind of insane, but...
Yeah, you got to play the game to a certain extent, but there's a fine line, right? Yeah. I'm not making, like, for example, how to flume.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many of those are there?
Or you'll never believe the secret dubstep trick.
I think it's
especially number 5.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then just have like one little tidbit of knowledge about the synth at the very end, and just like 30 minutes of your day. just like a random
The worst ones are like the sound recreation ones that like you follow along and it sounds nothing like what they came up with, and then you look in the comments and they're like, "Oh, dude, sorry, I just had ozone on the master," or like I had like a fuck ton of effects on the master. I'm like, bro, you didn't fucking tell me that shit.
Yeah.
Why would you upload it?
Exactly.
That or when you don't have the actual sound you're working for until the very end. It's like play it at the beginning, and then I'm like, okay, now I want to figure out how to make it. You got to put it right at the beginning, and then it's like, great, that's it. That's what the sound I'm looking for. Yeah.
That's funny. So we listened to your album, and I gotta say, I knew it was gonna be good, but I didn't expect it to be like one of the genuinely like best bodies of work I've ever listened to, like, or at least in a long time. I was like over the top impressed, man. It's actually unreal what you've done with that album.
Yeah, it's really
Appreciate that,
really
man.
impressive. I've got a couple questions for you there as well. But
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Joel.
So we figured we'd do kind of a quick deep dive on, I want to start with self-checkout. That's kind of the one for me. There's this one part of it. I figured to just choose one part of it, and we're going to play it. I think the three of us should be able to hear it. So hopefully I did the routing properly. Just around 140. So you have kind of like the more upbeat kind of synthy stuff that's still pretty heavily in terms of sound design. And then you move into kind of a more instrumental, I think it's a break beat, but I'll just play it for us so we can hear it. Let me get to the section here. It's like 140, I think. Okay, there, should be able to hear that. Okay, so that's actually already past it. So right here. So that part right there, for me, when it comes to music, the transitions are really what it gets it for me. Like, it's being able to kind of transition from something that's more intense, like, you've got those super saw, kind of the more intense sound design, and you just break it all down, but so smoothly. So for me, I just had a couple questions. Like, how did you kind of start that track in particular? Do you remember? Did you start with the drums, the melody?
I started with the chord progression, and the chord progression was pretty damn different. And initially, the track was way chiller. It was like much more so the parts that were, very minimal in that track.
So you kind of build it up. Then you start from just like the yeah. Okay.
I mean, basically, I was like, I did the chill part, and I was like, damn, this is kind of boring on its own. So I wanted to have that really, really big in your face section. So I just layered a bunch of sounds together and made that happen. But it's nice that you point out the contrast, because the contrast is really something that I try and go for. And I tell my students a lot that it's really just the change in energy in music that makes it really engaging.
100%. Yeah. It's like you're telling a story essentially. But the hard part for me, I've been producing for 5 or 6 years, only seriously for the last 3 or 4 since I met Mike. Mm-hmm. And, I can do the transitions and add the contrast, but sometimes it's hard to, transition from that high energy moment to that low energy. You got to find that idea that kind of links them together. And so pretty much all the songs, but that part in particular, I just love how it kind of transitions right out of kind of a more sound design heavy to kind of a more breakdown and groove section. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Given that oh, sorry, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's really interesting to notice that a lot of your songs, they tend to go through a wide range of emotions, where most of the time I hear music that's kind of like one idea, and maybe it's like one giant wall of sound. And if you want to hear something a little bit different from an artist, you have to go to a whole other track. But you tend to, or you've managed to rather, fit multiple genres and multiple sounds into each song that you have. So like, what is your thought process in like how you're arranging things in a way that doesn't sound like you're adding too much, and yet you're still able to go through so many things without making things overwhelming?
Damn, I wish I had the fucking formula. Yeah, basically it's just, once again, I get bored with tracks that repeat a lot, especially instrumental music. There's a big phenomenon in like EDM, for example, where nobody plays the second drop when they're DJing, just because oftentimes the second drop sounds exactly the same as the first, right? And there's no reason to play it. So I just want to sort of avoid that phenomenon in my own music and make it always to feel like you said, telling a story where we end up in a pretty different place at the end of the track from
where you started.
Beginning. And it's sort of like a linear arrangement, meaning that there isn't really much going back to a previous section, at least most of the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, given that the album is like, obviously there's some songs that are really heavy on the sound design. You can tell there's just so much detail going on in there. And me and Mike spent a ton of time doing sound design. So I know how complex that can get and how easy it is to get in the weeds and kind of forget about the big picture of the song. Are there techniques used for this specifically to kind of make sure you were staying musical when you were spending so much time kind of diving down and making all that sound design? Because for me, that's one of my big challenges. I'll spend a long time and make something that's like, okay, well, I'll just throw this out because it doesn't sound good, or it doesn't actually.
Yeah. There's definitely been sessions where I'm like working in the middle of the track and I'm like trying to get this one sound right, and it takes me, a couple hours. But one thing that's helped me is just to do all the sound design, or at least like 60% of it ahead of time. So just having dedicated sound design sessions and bouncing everything out to audio, and then just having a folder over on the left side of my browser called my WOMPs folder, where I just put all my WOMPs, and bring them in when need be. And of course, sample packs help. So
Of course, yeah.
all the sample packs that I used in the album were by a producer called Copycat. He's like a neuro hop producer, and another producer called Blake Scouron, who also has really, really dope sound design. So I used a lot of their sounds throughout the album a lot as well, and created a lot of inspiration for me. So yeah, basically I would just say having sounds ready to go, but at the same time, I end up making a lot of sounds for the track anyways.
Ahead of time, yeah. But also during the process as well.
During the track, yeah, exactly, because it's just sometimes there's no other way around it.
Yeah, I think that's the doing it ahead of time. That's like the Noisia technique, right? The three of them, they just go in their pods and spend 3 hours doing sound design, and they come out and make a song out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. So that was sound design, and then I wanted to focus on, in terms of your arrangements. Obviously, we kind of touched on how you're these varied sections. I'm wondering, do you use arrangement view or session view? Do you do it all linearly and kind of copy it around, and you kind of tell the story that way, or do you actually kind of riff on it a bit more in something like session view, where you can set up the scenes and you can switch between them?
Yeah, I pretty much never used session view for the duration of the album. I mean, the only track that I really started out in session view was the first one. Everything else was just straight to arrangement. Yeah, to do like all the sound design and the chopping of audio and all that fun stuff, there's no real good way of doing it in the session view.
Yeah.
So like all this, it was all sound design heavy enough where it just made sense to sort of jump straight into the arrangement from the get-go.
And so you didn't even have kind of like, you probably jammed when you're doing early on trying to find those chords. You're probably jamming on piano for that part, and then pretty much as soon as you start the beat and all that stuff, you're just directly into session view from that point on.
Yeah, no, arrangement view like the whole way through 100%.
Oh, sorry. I switched that around there, but session arrangement.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Cool. And for self-checkout, last track in the song, was there kind of a specific inspiration or kind of a goal for that song theme that you were going for that? Is there a story behind the name?
Well, the whole album kind of has a loose theme around technology and making technology expressive and, where all that's heading. So self-checkout is just kind of a tongue-in-cheek name.
That's smart. I get it.
It's like the self-checkout line at the fucking grocery store, which we're all scared of going out these days. And
I still go to the regular
also
checkout.
just the end of the song, end of the album. So it's like you're doing that, getting out of there. So yeah,
that's smart. That's pretty cool. And you also answered my other question as well, which is pretty much what's the concept as a whole, which is pretty much just like computers, automation and stuff, which fits with your sound design, but then that's contrasted with your arrangement as well as the fact that you're doing a lot of classical piano and interesting styles. I feel like when we were listening to it, the first thing I thought was I was really thinking a lot like the new Cone Sound album.
That was a huge fucking inspiration.
Yeah, I love, I can't remember the main track on that one, but man, I've listened to that probably 100, maybe 200 times. That one, and then you said Anomaly, right, Mike, in terms of kind of the actual...
Yeah, I was going to say, like, when I first heard the album, like, all I could think is, like, this sounds like a heavier version of Haywire and Anomaly, mixed with, like, some crazy, I don't even know, almost like Noisia, really. Like, you've got a lot of... Your sounds they don't sound like the commercial preset synth patches. They've got a little bit of grit to them. They've got a little bit of like almost lo-fi, but still very clear. Even your chord patches, they sound like they're made out of some sort of distorted vocal sound or something. And it's really interesting to see like you're using like jazz harmony mixed with like, virtuoso solo-y melody type ideas, but then also juxtaposing that against like crazy heavy sound design and bass stuff. So like who were your main influences for writing this album? Like what were you thinking about listening to?
You guys kind of hit the nail on the head with a lot of them. Cohen Sound is a huge one for like sound design and mixing and just the way they combine like heavy ass neuro sound design plus really lush, beautiful harmonies, chords, pads, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like Polychrome, that album, I mean, just the fucking mixing on that, it's like, mwah, it's like fucking perfect. I haven't even heard anything that comes close to that.
Yeah.
Another big one, just on the sound design end, is Moody Good. He has an album called Music to Go Fuck Yourself Too. And I spent hours trying to recreate sounds from that, and that's just like a huge inspiration. So just like the heaviness comes a lot from that. Anomaly and Haywire are really inspiring ones from like a performance and like piano sort of side of things, just because I've seen Haywire live twice, and like his live show is just fucking incredible, and he's clearly just like a god on the piano.
Yeah.
But one thing that, you know, I have found really attractive is just like, you know, that combination of just like, yeah, we got the lush chords and melodies and stuff like that, but just like also just some crazy ass womps. So
Yeah.
that's sort of this is the sort of sweet spot that I've found for myself. Because I was finding that if I was just making pure womp music, then I was getting bored because it just kind of lacked a little, you know, soul and storytelling and character for me. But at the same time, if I just go pure anomaly, that tends to sound, I don't know, sometimes a little cheesy or corny or a little bit too heady for me. So just kind of that sweet spot where I really like to be.
Yeah, that totally makes sense for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you found a good sweet spot there for sure. Like I agree with all those sentiments a lot, because I find, you know, any producer or musician rather who is very good at music it's gonna, you know, likely be performing music that's kind of like a, hey, look at me, look how much I know sort of thing, and then they skip the vibe part.
Yep.
But then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got just, you know, monotone music that's just groove the whole way through, which is great for dancing. But then at a certain point, you're like, okay, like, what's next? And yeah, you found a very nice balance. And that's, I think, why I really loved the album a lot too, is because I really like a wide range of music, and you captured like all the right parts that I like. So
yeah,
so ace job on that. You know.
In a weird way, I would almost say it's like pop for musicians that are also like EDM musicians, but also like that. Like it mixes all the things together in a really nice way. It's still got the really good sound design, got the really, because I'm getting more and more into like, you know, complex harmonies and all that stuff. And whenever I hear like the chords go out, I'm like, oh, this is going in the playlist for sure.
Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. So you want to follow up then, Mike?
Yeah. So random tangent here outside the album. What's something interesting that, you know, people might not know about you that you haven't had the opportunity to sort of share with the world? Anything come to mind?
This is the
favorite
put you on the spot
food,
question.
Favorite color, favorite movie?
Nothing.
You've given us everything, eh? Full Monty.
Man. Dude, I don't know. Just been playing hella Red Dead too. Just been playing so fucking much Red Dead.
Your quarantine going well?
I love that game. Yeah, it's perfect for my quarantine brain, because it's like, you know, you can't go outside, so I'm just like wandering this sort of digital wilderness, and just like skinning animals and just being like, man, I'm really connecting to nature right now, except completely not.
It's like virtual camping.
It's like the exact opposite. It's an oxymoron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been loving that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that was like a curveball, so we just wanted to see what you would respond to that one. That one's a bit trickier. We understand that.
Yeah. And
then getting back to the music, we've been talking about electronic, obviously, you know, Cohen Sound Electronic, their influence, and Moody Good. Is there like a non-electronic artist that, you know, obviously you play piano, so I'm sure you've, you know, heard of a lot of the pianists. Is there any specific that you actually pull into your music today that's like a pretty big influence?
I really like Robert Glasper. I don't know if you guys know him.
Yeah.
But he's like a really dope jazz kind of hip hop pianist that fuses a lot of those genres together. And he played on like To Pimp a Butterfly with Kendrick. He played on Thundercat stuff a lot, and yeah, he's super dope. So I really love Robert Glasper.
Yeah, he has an insane drummer it's like the Robert Glasper trio. I can't remember the name of his drummer, but the guy is absolutely incredible. So
yeah,
great music there for sure.
Yeah.
Any others that come to mind?
In terms of like non-electronic, I really love like Deftones and Meshuggah. And like Deject shit. And there's another really good kind of math rock band called Town Portal. That's fucking awesome. So check those out. But yeah, that stuff is like really heavy with like really weird ass time signatures, and it's just like it's like super chaotic music, but also really controlled as well.
Yeah.
And I just love that shit.
Mike is on.
I was waiting for you to mention like Animals as leaders and
those are great too.
those guys. Yeah. Have you ever considered writing electronic music in odd time signatures, or do you just avoid that?
Yeah, it's funny. Me and my girlfriend were roasting tracks the other day on my stream, and I pulled up this one track that came out a couple of days ago called Polyrhythm, like dubstep rhythm, and it's like a 7/4 dubstep rhythm track. That's just fucking terrible. I don't know if you guys have heard that shit.
No.
Yeah, but it's so fucking funny.
Isn't rhythm pretty much just like one note? Like, so it doesn't even really matter
so
if it's
what makes it. You guys just have to fucking hear this shit.
We can find it on
so
SoundCloud
awesome.
somewhere, probably.
It's 7 of the same note.
But I've like definitely had that thought, like, you know, who has like combined like animals as leaders with like, I don't know, fucking Excision? Has somebody done that yet? And I mean, it sounds like it could be either really cool or just really terrible. And every time I've tried it, it just sounds really terrible. So I'm just kind of giving up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are some really dope like electronic songs that are in weird time signatures. One of the first things that I do with my new students is I explain to them what meter is and what time signatures are. And we talk about like a couple examples. So like, for example, one big one is like Hey Ya by Outkast is like in 22/4. And another one is like Armin van Buuren, This Is What It Feels Like is like in 14/4 or some shit. It's like a trance. It's like a pop trance song. It's 14/4. So, yeah.
Yeah, I find you get a lot more freedom if the bottom digit is a 4. Just because you're going to get that quarter note pulse, right? So you're still going to, if you're jumping up and down, you're going to be on the beat. It's not going to flip every 2 bars like 7/8 or something, right? So it's a little bit more, accessible to produce something in anything over 4. But it is interesting to see how people come up with interesting arrangements like that. I've seen Tipper do a couple things in 7 as well, but it tends to work better on the more dreamy end of the spectrum than it does on something with like a fat backbeat, right? Because it's just, the time is odd for a reason.
Yeah.
Those tracks are 100% traps for your DJ library. When you actually pop one of those in there, you're like, I'm counting up, but it's not lining up. I've had a couple. I was like, I'm getting rid of this. I'm sorry, I can't keep track of the time signatures of every song I'm playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Funny enough, actually, Happy Birthday is in 3/4, and a lot of people don't realize that. 2, 3.
Okay. Yeah. I feel that.
Interesting. Mike said,
I love how everyone just stops and sings it.
Well, it's okay because probably the listeners did the same thing. So
yeah, exactly. 100%.
I was going to say Mike's a huge Tool fan. So what is it, 5/4 that they normally play?
A lot of stuff in 7. They're all over the place. It's kind of just the thing about Tool that's really special is they're able to pull off odd time signatures and even odd meter like changes, throughout bars, but like without it sounding like it's forced. And that's, I think, the biggest problem with trying to write something in an odd meter is someone's like, I'm going to write something in 7. And then their mindset is like, I need to fit this into 7 beats. Whereas the riff or the idea should just sort of naturally come out. And then you're like, oh, this happens to be in an odd time signature, but it grooves, and so you can follow that instead of trying to force some weird rhythm on someone that you can't really, interpret.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So definitely curious. What are your plans for the future right now? I mean, we're 17. Wow, did I just go back in time 3 years? 2020
I wish we were
has kind of been a write-off. So everyone's plans have been sort of, slowed down a little bit. But what do you got going on? What do you got, cooking?
Well, we're starting to release the album next month, which is dope, and
nice.
Got some pretty exciting stuff to dole out with that. And I'm also trying to turn my Discord, or at least I'm basically trying to create a label around my Discord. So there's a lot of dope ass talent in the Discord community that I have. And I'm just trying to find a way to showcase that talent in, a way that makes sense and in a way that, gets people heard and excited. So that's what I'm trying to figure out now. In addition to lots of collabs. So I haven't really collabed that much at all prior to, finishing this album. And now I'm just bored of myself. So
got some new ideas.
I'm just trying to collab and work with other people. And so far I've been having a really great time. I'm collabing with this one dude in my Discord. And so, yeah, that's really what I've been working on. And other than that, just kind of, trying to stay sane amidst, global apocalypse and all that. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Aren't we all? Yeah. Do you?
Yeah.
I think when all this is over, would it be possible that would you try to do a live show? I don't know if have you done that before? Do you have any experience with that kind of stuff? Would you turn it into something like that, or is that kind of not on your radar?
Yeah. So what I'm actually also trying to figure out now is a way to perform the album live. And so far, I'm 3 tracks in about. It's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
But I'll power through it, and depending on when I get finished with that, I'll probably do like a live performance stream or something like that. Just to sort of get out the live show, but not actually have any sort of physical contact with any humans. Mm-hmm. And then as far as in the future goes, assuming we're not dead by the end of the year,
yeah,
and music venues are still a thing, it'd be really cool to do like a small West Coast tour or something like that, just to sort of play it out. And, maybe in addition to doing shows, I would also like to do like workshops.
Yeah.
I got my Ableton certification a few months ago. So, I kind of want to flex that, maybe do some music groups and, all that fun stuff, not just teach through Zoom.
100%. Yeah. How long did it take to get that certification? I think me and Mike have looked at it a while ago, but it's not since for probably a year or two.
I can't get super into detail because they NDA'd the shit out of me, but it took a really long time, and it was a really hard process. It took a lot of time and mental energy. Yeah. And honestly, if unless you really need the official validation, my ego does, then it's not worth it.
Yeah.
or you really want to teach at a school, right? Yeah. Icon or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if you want to turn your school into an Ableton certified training center. Yeah. You sort of need to get that, and that'll show up on their website. You'll get more traffic that way. But I have too many students as is, so didn't really need that either. Just
how many people are you teaching? Do you know? You must.
I'm taking a look at my schedule. So I'm teaching between 4 to 7 lessons a day. So Monday through Friday.
Wow.
So that's 30 students about a week. And then I do orientations with new people every week.
Yeah.
30 to 40, something like that. Concurrent students. Yeah, it's a lot.
Cool.
You ever mix up their names?
Yeah. Fortunately, I write their names down.
Yeah.
So that's good.
That's good. Yeah.
As far as the teaching from Zoom goes, for the most part, it's really sick because I still have a job through all this, which is something that is very lucky, very, very lucky. What's not so sick is people flake all the time. And, there's obviously connection issues, and I have to say, hit share screen, make sure share computer sound is checked 10 times a day. Yeah. Other than that, it's a pretty sweet gig. And I get to connect and help people from around the world and watch people grow and get better. And, well,
that's what's so cool about the whole streaming and online aspect. It's if you're running a show locally, hopefully you've got a bunch of fans of your genre in your city, right? But if you're streaming online, it's, that you could be a drum and bass producer in a place that there's no drum and bass, and a bunch of guys from Europe are like, wow, this guy's sick out in some Mexico or something. Yeah. And it can really pick up a lot. Do you find that doing that many lessons kind of takes creative energy out of you when you're actually just trying to write your own projects?
100%. But it's also very creatively inspiring. So it kind of needs, there's a sweet spot there. It's really creatively good because, it makes me really know my shit because I have to explain it, and also, students are interested in a wide variety of different genres. And that's, partially why the album is so varied, just because I've had to, get my feet wet in so many different, areas of music. So that's been really, really good. What's somewhat creatively draining is looking at 7 hours or 8 hours of other people's Ableton screens a day, and then having to look at my own Ableton screen. And that's kind of a drag. But and also just having to repeat the same shit over and over again. But for the most part, I think it's been really good. And honestly, I don't think I need to produce more than like 2 hours a day. Like even that I think is, you know, a lot. Yeah, I don't really necessarily need to do more than that, just because I find myself getting creatively exhausted pretty quickly after that.
Yeah.
Man, here I am spending 4 hours on a single sound. I'm doing something wrong.
He does that, and I feel the same way. So I have a day job as well. So I work during the day, and I'm actually going back to work. I'm in Vancouver, but the offices are starting to open up again. But yeah, it's like, I think 2 hours a day is kind of the sweet spot, depending upon kind of your workflow. Obviously, if your workflow is really slow, you have to spend more time.
Right.
But if you've got everything around you, and, you know, like in your case, you've done the sampled sound design ahead of time, so you got all your samples and everything, you can really get a lot done in 2 hours. And then, you know, your ears don't tire out, because if you're trying to mix down a song after a 3 hour, you know, writing session, good luck.
Sure.
It's going to be not going to make any sense.
Yeah. So with your students, do you kind of two questions here, I guess, because you've got your package, which is like one lesson, you know, like one at a time, or you've got sort of a 4 lesson thing, and that system's really smart, because I'd never even considered, you know, offering people packages and stuff like that. But do you find that a lot of your students are just like sort of a one-time thing, or like they'll get the one package and then you'll never see them again, or do you have a lot of students who you've been teaching regularly for an extended period of time?
Yeah, I've had students that I've taught for, you know, years, or like probably the longest was like maybe a year or a year and a half in a row, or they'll like disappear for a year and then come back. So if people are down to do like the 4-pack, usually they will continue. As far as the one-off session go, I mean, there's multiple reasons why somebody would do the one-off. Like, for example, if they're doing something really specific that really only needs to happen for one session, you know, I do that as well. Or they just can't afford more than one. That happens as well. But yeah, I think for the people who can't afford it and want to sort of level up, they know that just one session is not going to cut it. So that's why I offer the 4-pack, because, you know, to really make progress, has to be like a regular thing, which is why I meet with my students once a week and I assign homework, and you know, I sort of walk them through like a curriculum, because without that sort of goal in mind, it's just like I kind of lost at sea, and they're back to sort of the same habits that, you know, got them into looking for lessons in the first place.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you're going to school and every year you just went to class for one day, and it's like, okay, one day, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
You spend the rest of the year trying to learn everything on your own after that one feedback session.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, in the future, I would like, you know, one thing that I was considering after I get, you know, I push out this album and I finish out the live show and maybe do some collabs, is to sort of make a video course, so that, you know,
a masterclass sort of thing.
Exactly. So that, like, you know, people pay 10 or 20 bucks and they basically get the curriculum, and maybe I pair that with, you know, couple of feedback sessions or something like that are actually in person. Yeah. Just because I find myself that the actual like teaching part, you know, I just end up repeating the same thing over and over again, and that can be sort of draining a little bit. And also I want to make sure that everybody is getting the more or less consistent package if they're going for the curriculum approach.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I guess, you know, on the horizon for me, because I would like to in the future maybe trade less of my time for money and just have sort of more of a passive income thing.
Yeah.
While still helping people and maybe making it more affordable to more people, and also offering private lessons for those who do really still need that, you know, personalized instruction.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good formula, because it also, for you, just from a quality of life, it gets everybody on the same page. So everybody, you know, has watched the first 3 or 4 of your courses. It's like they come to you with their unique questions after they've already heard you say the thing that you tell everybody. So it saves you a lot of stuff on that part.
Yeah.
So having such a wide range of students, what do you find is like the most difficult thing to teach, or at least rather, what are the more difficult experiences you've had with trying to ingrain a concept into people?
Oh man. Well, the time signature thing is definitely really hard for somebody who doesn't know what time signatures are, has only ever heard music in 4/4, or didn't even know that 4/4 meant anything. So the ability to sort of listen for that is something that a lot of people struggle with. Some people pick it up immediately. Other people need 3 to 4 lessons to get it. And even then they still don't get it, which is perfectly fine, I think, because it's a really tough skill, being able to listen for music in that way if you've never done it before.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of a really fundamental thing that you kind of have to rewire your brain to do. The other thing is, after I do that, I talk about drums, and I talk about building drum clips at different energy levels. So really making sure that we're very distinct in terms of our intro drums versus our verse drums versus our drop or chorus drums, and talking about how to create the changes in energy in music. A lot of people really struggle with that. They think adding one hi-hat is a huge energy change because they're so, they're, in the zone. They're like producers and they're really detail oriented, and they think that just because it's a big deal for me, that means everybody's going to fucking perk up. And as soon as they hear that extra one hi-hat, and I'm like, no, it usually takes like at least 3 changes or something like that to really make each clip, each energy level feel distinct. So that's another sort of difficult thing that people have to wrap their head around, which is basically boils down to subtlety is overrated. And then the other thing would be like knowing what key you're in, and not really in sort of like the music theory sense, but the listening sense, like which chord feels like home. That's another thing that people really struggle with. Because there's no real music theory answer to that. You just sort of have to listen for which chord feels most resolved. And it's kind of a subjective thing. And that's another sort of ear training exercise that definitely takes a lot of practice for people, because, a lot of people just end up in minor because minor is just the most common scale there is. And they sort of can struggle sometimes breaking out of that and treating another chord as home. So that's another difficult thing for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've had very similar experiences with that because, I was blessed with a very specific amount of talent sort of when I started making music. So then when people come to me, how do you find the key to a song? I genuinely don't know how to answer that question. I'm like, well, it's the one that's the key. Right? It's the note that is the one that you want, right? And I remember actually, funny enough, I explained it to Joel once, and it was weird because I didn't know that he didn't know how to find the key to a song, because every time he would write a drop, I'm like, well, it's in key, right? So that's how I explained it to him. I'm like, you've never shown me a song where your drop was in a different key, so like whatever key you're writing for the drop, that's probably the key of the song. And then he got it right away. So I was lucky there. Well,
it's funny because basically Mike taught me music theory because I had a little bit of piano theory, and it's a funny story because, and it relates to you teaching as well, because you never know what people, like what habits and the way that what they've learned up to this point. So the trick is like figuring, okay, what are their misunderstandings and how do you correct those to get them to understand what's actually going on? And I didn't understand like basically note numbers at all. I just thought it was like 1 to 8. And then I didn't realize that there's like a minor second, major second, minor third, major third. And as soon as you told me that, I instantly understood everything because I learned everything else. And I just was so confused by that. and then it's like you count up to the 3, but it's in key or not. And I remember there was like one session we were just chatting on Discord, and you were like, oh yeah, there's 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, middle, 5. And I was like, what? This makes no sense. And then it immediately changed it all for me in like probably 20 or 30 minutes. It's funny how just little things like that.
For sure.
So
I mean, it's definitely super rewarding when finally you can see it on their faces.
Yeah.
I mean, in the little screen, but you can see it on their faces that it clicks.
Yeah.
And, it's just super dope seeing that.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, asking you what's the most difficult part, what is it that you love about producing that keeps you, that made you do it this long? Like you've been producing for a long time. What What is it that keeps you going? Your favorite parts?
It's just really fucking fun, man.
You like the process.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I like the process. I like, I'm, super interested in sound design and super interested in harmony and just delivering emotion and creating worlds through music. And it's just super fucking fun and visceral and rewarding. I love the act of playing piano. I love digging around in Serum. I love teaching. Of course, I love feeling good feeling like I'm good at something.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it. There's definitely days where I'm like so burnt out on this shit, and I just or I feel like, whatever I'm making just is utter trash, or sometimes I have a really good session the day before, and then I'm afraid of having another session today because I'm afraid that it won't be as good as the previous one, or the mojo will be gone or some shit like that. So of course there's challenges and self-doubt, creeps in, not uncommonly, but for the most part, it's just really fucking fun.
Yeah. You just got to focus on the good days.
That.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I find sometimes, even when you have one of those experiences where you spent 8 hours on something and it turned out to be complete garbage, it's like the experience as itself is actually a positive thing because you've just spent a bunch of time learning what not to do.
Yeah.
Or another lesson I take from that is, and I've heard Mr. Bill talk about this too, is that the more time you spend on something, the more you sort of think you have to use it because you've spent all this time on it, when in fact it might not actually serve the song the best. So another, I would say, equally important thing to take from that is the amount of time you spend on something has almost nothing to do with how good it actually is. There's nothing wrong with just putting in a fucking splice loop if that's what the track needs, right?
Yeah. I think it's a sunk cost fallacy, essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
what's it called?
Sunk cost fallacy. So it's think about if you're like a gambler and you've bet $90,000 and you have 100, you're like, well, I got to get my money back, bet the other 10,000 kind of thing. But that was a terrible analogy. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. That makes perfect sense. Because if you're in the hole at a casino,
it falls apart on the edges. As I was saying it, I was trying to analyze. I'm like, oh, this does not make perfect sense. But, yeah.
No, it's good.
Yeah. But I find that that process of being making something that you're going to throw away sometimes is essential, because I come from a software background where you do what's called iterative software design. You build a product, but then often you have to build a broken product to really understand what you have to build. And I think with Lost in Translation, like mine and Mike's song, we wrote probably 20 minutes worth of music and cut it down to 7, but we couldn't have wrote the 7 minutes without the rest that we wrote, because it kind of helped us figure out what it is that we wanted to write. So the way I think about it's not lost time. You're just trying to figure out what it is that you really want the song to be.
For sure.
It's all just practice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I got one last question, and then if you have one too, Mike, I think that's probably good. We're right at 50 minutes or so. So last question is actually kind of about albums, and you're releasing a whole format album, which is pretty uncommon these days. Machine Yearning feels like it's a pretty big move towards kind of creating a more cohesive album. I was looking at the individual SoundCloud releases you had before that. They're more separated, whereas this is kind of like a package. It's a whole album, and you're trying to keep a theme there. Is that a direction you're thinking you want to continue working towards and keep it just separated albums? And do you think it's potentially they could coexist, single releases, just SoundCloud single releases and an album, or would you rather do one or the other?
Well, from a promotional perspective, albums don't really make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
Just because nobody has the patience for them. And unless they're really invested in you as an artist, they probably won't listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is also why I'm going to be probably releasing each track individually and
as
then
a
putting
single,
it together. Yes. And then putting them together as an album, when they're all released.
Yeah.
So promotionally, marketing wise, it doesn't make any sense. But artistically, I'm sentimental about it. For me to really get into an artist, it has to be sort of an album. It can't really, usually at least, be a collection of singles. kind of takes the extended listening for me to sort of really, feel out the world this dude or lady is trying to create musically for me.
Yeah.
From an artistic perspective, I still value it. From a promotional perspective, not so much. I mean, the other thing is that albums take a lot of fucking work. And sometimes you just want to get the music out there without having to wait so long. So probably won't do another album for maybe another year or two or more. I don't know. And just focus on singles and EPs, something a little less pressured. But it was something that I really wanted to do because first off, I never really done it before and I wanted to prove myself that I could. Second off, I wanted to establish my sound as an artist. And third off, I just wanted to have, I guess just like a body of work because I have a pretty big body of work as a YouTuber, not so much as a musician. And so I just want to, tell the world, hey, I can do I can walk the walk in addition to telling you that you suck at producing. So
it's really a rite of passage. That's the way I see it. And again, you also end up with a body of work that people can sit down and listen to over an entire session. So
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, going back to Machine Yearning, it's crazy because you have so many sounds and such a variety of things going on, and yet you managed to make it all sound like it came from the same place. Everything is totally cohesive, and all of the sounds work together, and all the songs relate to all the other songs, which I find is one of the most difficult things when constructing an album, because from song to song, I may do completely different things, So yeah, really, really awesome job on that, because I find, a lot of people when I hear their first album, even my own first album is a bad example, is, each song sounds like a different producer wrote it because they're all just trying out new things, right? So
yeah,
for sure.
Getting that cohesion's difficult.
Do you?
Yeah, and by the way, this is my first album that I'm releasing. It's not the first album that I made. So,
great job.
I was really close, like a couple of years ago, to releasing one before this one, and I had a label lined up and everything, and it was going to be a big fucking deal. And I listened to it, I guess, like the 50th time, and I was like, you know what, this is bad. I'm scrapping this.
Yep.
And that was like 4 years ago, and so.
Wow.
Well, it's great that you were mature enough to be able to make that decision, because a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I did.
Cool. Last thing, I guess, because you probably have to run pretty quick here. You're a musician like us, and like you just mentioned before, you really are sentimental about listening to an album as a whole and seeing a whole body of work, because really that's what we did back in the day when we were kids, is we would get a CD and listen to it on repeat because it's the only one we could afford.
Yeah.
So do you have any favorite albums or something that's like just like an album, a body of work that you're like, yeah, this one I've listened to it a million times. I love this album. This is really good. Like, what do you got?
Yeah, Spine by Blake Scowron is a big one. Music to Go Fuck Yourself To by Moody Good, that's a big one. Polychrome by Cohen Sound. Around the Fur by Deftones. Chronopoly by Town Portal. More electronic stuff. Really like Wander Wonder by Bala Macabre. DJ Shadow's Introducing, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Trying to think what else. Yeah, I've been kind of looking for album long electronic music that's come out recently.
It's pretty rare.
It's pretty rare. Yeah, not a lot of people do it. I'm looking through my Spotify right now. Yeah, that's sort of kind of what I got off top. Flying Lotus, I always had some really dope album long stuff that worked really well cohesively together.
That's a huge list, man.
Yeah.
That's great. I expected 2 or 3 or something, that was really good. You just listed off a bunch of things for me to go check out now.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna
one more album length one that was really good recently was Sam Gellatry put out an album.
Oh god, yeah.
Sam Gellatry, but he's a beast.
I think he's younger than both of us, all three of us as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
cool.
Awesome. I think
All
on
right.
that note, we really appreciate you coming on. It's really cool. Like you're our first guest. We've been doing this kind of in an echo chamber with just me and Mike. So it's really great to have you on and answer some questions for us.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Sweet. So make sure you go check out Machine Yearning when it comes out. Do we have you said you have a first track release date ready to go?
Yeah, first track is coming out June 15th.
Awesome.
Yes,
June
so.
15th. Awesome. So that's just under a month away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might already be out by the time this episode is live, but
Hopefully.
But yeah, definitely. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. If you want to learn more about producing, go check out You Suck at Producing, because there's tons of information there. And if you need more, call him and he'll hook you up.
He'll teach you about time signatures to start.
Awesome.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks.
Take care.
Peace.
Cheers. Bye.
Well, you did really well. You kind of carried us through that.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a team effort. I think we found a pretty decent, what do you call it, rhythm, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Considering we never talked to him before.
Yeah. No, that was great. Yeah. And now we have like a good piece of extra content that's not just the same thing.
Exactly.
So hell yeah.
It's not, as I said, it's just not an echo chamber of our mad thoughts going back and forth.
Yeah, straight up. I have to laugh that the first thing that we hear when we get on is, how are you guys doing this?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll ask. We should do we should do like an EPK for the setup.
Yeah. No, that was great.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So I guess I don't really have anything else to say. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. It's been a long day, but that went well.
Yeah, same. I got a bunch of work to do. I have not moved much forward as much as I wanted to today on getting those samples ready. I'm fucked. Let's just say that.
Fuck. Okay. Well,
I'm supposed to have the whole pack packed up and ready to send by the end of today.
How many hours do you have left, do you think? A lot?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't really help you because I need to go to sleep like pretty much immediately after this. I'm exhausted, and then I have the festival thing tomorrow. But
yeah, if you can, just send me over those presets.
They're already in the folder. They're already there.
Perfect.
And they're all named, and they should be all clean. So like they should be just good to go. You can check them if you want. I don't know if your labels or the management's going to do that as well, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll go through them for sure, but I'm certain they're great.
They should all have 4 macros. A couple of them have mod knobs.
Beautiful.
Anything else you want to say about that? I think that was pretty good. I mean, we're still recording here, so.
Yeah. No, that was really fun. I enjoyed having a guest. It definitely gave us a little bit more practice on interviewing, as well as a little bit more insight into kind of other people's thought processes instead of us just going down the same old rabbit holes that we do every time.
I definitely think it's good. Probably not every episode, but like probably every 2 or 3 kind of thing. We can just have it as kind of a tack on section and, it's kind of going to be the main thing. Cause that was 45 minutes or 50 minutes or so. So we had, that's a full chunk right there. But I would be interesting to see, cause that was very much straight interview. There were sections of dialogue, but it was pretty on the nose, interview style. I wonder if
that's kind of what I expected.
Yeah.
Just based off of the way that he kind of goes about teaching the lessons.
Yeah.
And it's funny because just like he was saying, I have to say the same thing over and over again. Like when I first did the first lesson with him, I didn't really know how to use Zoom or whatever. So he's like, do this, do this, it's right. The button's right here in the top left of your, blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm listening to him talk and all I can think is like, oh man, how many times has he said this?
Yeah.
Right?
7 times a day potentially. So
at least, yeah, that's crazy.
Well, I'm glad that when my thing connected, it was all just already pre-configured because we did the Zoom call last week. So I would have had to because I didn't use Zoom before that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, great job.
It didn't break.
You did well.
It works.
Yes.
It's good.
Success.
I'm exhausted.
I like
now,
it.
So let's call it there.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll talk soon and see you guys next time on the Fkthry podcast, where we ironically talk about nothing but theory.
Welcome to another episode of the Fkthry. Oh my god, I need to redo that. Hi. But who do we have on the show today, Mike?
Oh, he's the man. Some known fuck.
Or he's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Without further ado, we'll cut to that.